Elisa Lam was 21, a Canadian college student from Vancouver who loved books, Tumblr, and travel. In January 2013, she booked a solo trip to California, posting updates as she went. Her last stop was LA. She checked into Seal Hotel, a cheap, infamous place in Skid Row that had a long, dark history. Serial killers like Richard Ramirez, Jack Underweger, and had stayed there. But Alicia didn't know that, or maybe she didn't care. At first, she was staying in a shared room, but after other guests complained about her strange behavior, the hotel moved her into a private one. What kind of behavior? That's where it gets strange. On January 31st, 2013, Alicia vanished. No checkout, no goodbye, just gone. The last thing anyone saw of her was hotel elevator footage. She steps in, acts confused, presses buttons, hides, steps out, gestures to something or someone off camera. Then she's gone. Police search the hotel, no trace. But 2 weeks later, the guests start complaining about the water, low pressure, a strange taste. So maintenance climbed to the roof, opened one of the hotel's massive water tank, and found her naked, decomposed, floating face up. Here's the thing, the water tank was locked. It was also nearly impossible to access without tripping the hotel's alarm. Even if she somehow got to the roof, she'd have to scale the platform, lift the heavy lid, and climb inside. So how did she get in there? No alt tests we found, no drugs, no alcohol. They called it an accident, a maniac episode. Ellis had bipolar disorder, and an toxicology report showed that she hadn't taken her full dosage of medication. But her family pushed back. She wasn't suicidal, she was on a trip that she was excited about. She was posting happy updates just days before, and that's where the internet takes over. Some say she was murdered, that someone was hiding just out of view in the elevator video. Others think she was hallucinating, seeing things that just weren't there. And then there was weirder theories. People claim Elisa was part of a government experiment, that her death mirrors a scene in the horror movie Dark Water, that the hotel history of death somehow pulled her in. And here's where it gets even creepier. A tuberculosis outbreak hit LA Skid Row just days after her death. The test for the strain was called Lam-Elisa test. Coincidence? The Seal Hotel was later rebranded, trying to escape its haunting reputation, but people still talked about that video. People still asked, was Elisa having a breakdown? Was she running from someone? Or was she drawn to something no one else could see? To this day, no one knows actually what happened or how she got in that tank or what she was seeing in that elevator. But whatever it was, it got her. This happened in 1986 in a small town in New Hampshire. The Andrews family had just moved into their new, beautiful home, a big, older house with creaky floors and drafty windows. Just a normal family, Brian, Annie, and their dad, Frank. Their mom had passed away from cancer a year before, so it was just the three of them now. But from that moment they moved in, they noticed weird things. Lights turning on by themselves, TV channels changing when no one was near the remote. Then came the voices. At first, they thought it was just pipes or maybe one of their kids playing pranks, but it kept getting weird, always at night. One evening, 15-year-old Annie was in her room when she heard someone whispering her name. She turned and saw something written on the walls in red letters. "I'm in your room. Come find me." She screamed. Her dad came running, checked the house, and found nothing. No signs of forced entry. Doors were locked. Windows were completely sealed. A few nights later, it happened again. A different room this time. Different message. "I'm back. Come play." That's when the family thought maybe Annie was just grieving. Losing her mom had hit her really, really hard, and maybe this was her way of acting out. But then her brother Brian started hearing things too. One night, they all heard a loud banging, like fist pounding on the walls. Dad thought someone was messing with them, so he called the cops, and they searched the house from top to bottom and found absolutely nothing. One night in January, Annie was alone. Her dad and brother went out, and she heard it again. "Annie, I'm waiting." She ran into her brother's room to hide, and that's when she saw it. On the wall, written in smeared red, "Marry me." Behind her, the closet door creaked open. She bolted out the room, barefooted, ran into the neighbors, and when her dad and police arrived, they searched again. This time, they found a hidden panel behind a cabinet in the basement. It led to a narrow crawl space between the walls, and inside, was a boy wearing a red dress that belonged to Annie's dead mother, holding a hatchet. The boy's name was Daniel LaPlate. He was 16. He had broken into the house weeks earlier, not to rob them, but to live. He had been sneaking food, watching the family, hiding in the walls, sometimes just standing a foot away while they slept. He would write messages to mess with them, dressed in their mother's clothing, and whisper through the vents. His reasoning? He told the police, "I just wanted to make her feel my pain." Turns out, Daniel had gone to school with Annie. They went on one date and she never called him back. So instead of moving on, he moved in. Daniel LaPlate was arrested and put into juvenile detention, but this isn't where the story ends, because 1 year later, after he was released, he broke into another house. This time, he wasn't there to haunt. He was there to kill. He murdered a pregnant woman named Priscilla Gustafson. He drowned her 2 children in their home. When police finally caught him, he showed no remorse, just smiled. To this day, he's still in prison, but the Andrews family, they have moved and never went back to that house. Can you blame them? A 16-year-old girl was kidnapped by her best friends, dragged into the forest, beaten, then buried alive. Dirt filling her mouth. She prayed someone would find her. But when rescue finally came, it wasn't who anyone was expecting. My name is Frankie Bryant. I tell real stories that sound like nightmares, and this one might be the worst betrayal I've ever heard of. This is the story of Stacy Duggan, a bright, filling high school junior from Southport, England. She was a quiet girl, artistic and sweet, not the type to get into trouble, but her friends were 2 girls named Jade and Lauren, who she'd known since elementary school. But here's the thing, all 3 had recently got into a new crowd, party kids. Older, drugs, trouble. Stacy didn't fit in, and slowly her 2 best friends were turning on her. Whispers behind her back, comments about her clothes, little humiliations at school parties. But then one day they invited her to hang out in the woods with them after class. Stacy, desperate to stay close to her friends, said yes. They walked into the deep wooden area called Cuckoo Wood, a known local hangout spot. Then everything changed. Without warning, Jade pulled out a bottle and smashed it across Stacy's face. Stunned and bleeding, Stacy tried to run away, but Lauren tripped her, and then the beating began. Kicks, punches, screams, all while filming it on a cell phone. They accused her of talking behind their backs and trying to steal someone's boyfriend. None of it was true. They just wanted to see her suffer. And then came the final blow. Let's make sure the can't talk anymore. That's what they said. They picked up a shovel. They forced Stacy in the shallow hole they had dug earlier. Then they covered her with dirt. At first, she screamed. Then she went silent, pretending to be dead. Her heart was pounding, her mouth filled with soil. She was convinced this was it. But the 2 girls laughed, laughing, saying she won't be a problem anymore. What they didn't know was Stacy was alive. She stayed buried for over 2 hours, barely clinging to any breath she had, until she heard someone walking nearby, a man walking his dog. With her last breath, an ounce of strength, she moved her fingers above the dirt. The man saw the hand sticking out the ground. He thought it was a corpse, until he saw it twitch. He called for help, and the paramedics pulled Stacy from her grave. She was barely conscious and covered in blood, bruises, and glass, but she was alive. When police questioned her, she didn't hesitate. Jade and Lauren did this to me. Police arrested both girls that same night. On their phones, videos of the attack. The vicious attack. Selfies and texts laughing about taking care of Stacy. They were 16 years old. At trial, both girls tried to blame each other. Neither showed real remorse. Judge described the crime as one of the most calculated and evil acts of juvenile violence I have ever seen. Both were sentenced to 14 years in prison, the maximum under juvie law at the time. As for Stacy, she recovered physically, but the scars never left psychologically. She moved away, changed her name, and hasn't spoken publicly since. The last thing she said to the media before disappearing was this: "They weren't monsters. They were my friends.